Jacob's Well, a popular swimming hole near Wimberley, will remain closed to swimmers for the foreseeable future.
The latest storms across Hayes County are bringing life back into one of the county's most popular watering holes, Jacob's Well.
In the heart of Texas Hill Country, just outside the small town of Wimberley, there's a swimming hole that looks like paradise. Crystal clear water, a perfect 68 degrees year-round, surrounded by limestone rocks where families leap and splash on hot summer days. It's called Jacob's Well, and it's one of the most beautiful and deadliest places in America. What most swimmers don't realize as they plunge into that inviting water is that they're jumping into the mouth of a killer. Beneath that perfect circle of blue lies a massive underwater cave system that has claimed at least 12 lives. The well has such a horrifying reputation that authorities have repeatedly tried to seal it permanently. But the well refuses to stay closed, drawing divers back again and again to their doom. For decades, the mystery of what happened to those lost divers remained unsolved. Their bodies were trapped so deep in the twisting passages that recovery was deemed impossible. But then scientists decided to send a drone where no human could safely go. What that machine's camera captured in the forbidden depths was a discovery that would finally reveal the well's gruesome secret. The perfect natural trap. Jacob's Well isn't actually a well. It's what geologists call a karstic spring, the opening of a vertical cave that plunges straight down into the Trinity Aquifer. That 12-foot wide hole in Cypress Creek's limestone bed is just the entrance to something far more sinister. For casual swimmers, the fun stops at about 30 feet down in the sunlit first chamber. But for scuba divers, that's just the beginning. The well is designed like a perfect natural trap, a maze of at least 4 known chambers connected by increasingly narrow and dangerous passages. These passages have names that sound like warnings: the birth canal, the coffin, and the final squeeze. The well's most dangerous weapon is its deceptive clarity. That crystal clear water lures people into a false sense of security. But the floors of the deep chambers aren't solid rock. They're covered in thick, powdery limestone silt. One misplaced fin kick can instantly transform clear water into an impenetrable white cloud called a silt out. In that total darkness, divers become disoriented within seconds. They can't see their hands, their gauges, or their dive buddy. Most critically, they can't find the guideline that leads back to the surface, if they even laid one. Panic sets in. Breathing becomes rapid, burning through air supplies at a terrifying rate. Lost and running out of oxygen, divers become permanently entombed in the passages that drew them in. The cycle of tragedy became so severe that authorities welded a heavy metal grate over the entrance to the deeper chambers. But the pull of the well proved too strong. Driven by the need to explore, divers would come in the dead of night with bolt cutters, breaking the grate open again and again. The well simply refused to stay closed. When science met horror, Jacob's Well isn't just a dangerous hole, it's a vital geological feature and the primary water source for Cypress Creek. It's a direct window into the Trinity Aquifer, which provides drinking water for millions. Scientists needed to understand what was happening inside, but sending another human down after so much tragedy was out of the question. That's when they turned to technology. On a calm morning, researchers gathered at the well's edge with Explorer, a sophisticated remotely operated vehicle. This bright yellow industrial-grade ROV was equipped with multiple 4K cameras, powerful lights, and advanced sonar to map the walls in total darkness. The mission seemed straightforward: descend to the 4th chamber and create the first ever 3D map of this impossible cave. The team had no idea they were about to witness something horrifying. As technicians lowered Explorer into the water, monitors in the nearby control van filled with blue. The descent began. The first chamber was beautiful, sunlight dancing on pale limestone walls. At 80 feet down in the 2nd chamber, the sunlight disappeared and the drone's powerful lights clicked on, cutting into pure subterranean blackness. Then came the birth canal, a passage barely wide enough for the drone itself. The operator carefully guided the ROV through, trying not to disturb the deep, loose gravel on the floor. Minutes later, the drone emerged into the 3rd chamber, a wider, silent void like a waiting room. Now for the main event. The operator pointed the drone toward a small, dark crack at the far end, the entrance to the 4th chamber, the point of no return. As the drone pushed into the narrow tunnel, its light suddenly reflected off something that wasn't rock. The operator stopped, a glint of metal. He zoomed the camera in. The team went silent. On the screen was a scuba fin sticking up from a pile of gravel. Then an old corroded oxygen tank half buried in silt, a tattered piece of black wetsuit snagged on sharp rock. And then they saw it. Skeletal remains tucked into a crevice, partially pinned by shifting gravel. This was no longer a geological survey. It had become a recovery mission performed by a robot. The legend of Kent Mopin. The diver's gear was clearly from another era. On the tattered wetsuit, a small faded name tag was barely readable. With digital enhancement, the letters slowly came into view. Kent Mopin. The name hit the team like a shockwave. Kent Mopin was a legend in the diving community, one of the most famous and tragic incidents in the well's history. He had vanished in this exact spot in September 1979. For over 40 years, his friends, family, and fellow divers had wondered about his final moments. The footage showed how the trap worked. The passage was incredibly narrow, and the entire floor was deep, unstable gravel. Kent hadn't just gotten stuck, the cave itself had buried him. The gravel had cascaded down, pinning him in place. But the drone found something even more disturbing. As it panned around the dark space, its lights hit another set of scuba tanks and another fin. Kent Mopin hadn't been alone. The team realized the horrifying truth. The drone was in a mass grave. The fatal dive. To understand what the drone found, you have to go back to September 9th, 1979. Cave diving was the Wild West then, a new frontier full of brave, reckless explorers driven by the need to go deeper and see what no one else had ever seen. Kent Mopin was one of those men. Young, experienced, and fearless, he was obsessed with Jacob's Well. He had dived it many times, but like so many others, he was hypnotized by the legend of the fourth chamber, the last frontier. That fateful evening, Kent and his friend Mark Brasher, a college student from San Jacinto College, decided they would conquer it. They were part of a larger group of 8 divers from Pasadena, camping near the well. As darkness fell, Kent, Mark, and a few others geared up, their nervous energy palpable. What many overlooked was their preparation, or lack of it. They carried no extra lights, no safety ropes, and crucially, they didn't run a guideline into the cave. Their plan was simple. Go in, trusting they could find their way back. It was a fatal mistake. Another diver named Joe followed them down through the first and second chambers and watched them squeeze through the birth canal into the third chamber. That's where the plan changed. Joe watched in horror as Kent and Mark pushed their heavy steel tanks ahead of them, squeezing into the narrow passage to the fourth chamber. Joe frantically swung his dive light, trying to get their attention. He banged his knife against his tank, the universal signal for danger. No answer came from the hole. His own air running dangerously low, Joe kept his light shining into the tunnel, a desperate beacon. Finally, survival forced him to turn back. As Joe ascended, the crystal clear water suddenly turned cloudy. Zero visibility. A silt out. Deep inside, Kent and Mark had disturbed the bottom, or the unstable gravel bed had shifted beneath them. When Joe broke the surface, he was alone. His screams for help shattered the quiet night. The rescue that became a nightmare. Police called Don Dibble, owner of a local dive shop and ex-Navy diver, the best deep-sea rescuer in the state. Even though the chances of finding them alive were almost zero, Don and his rescue team didn't hesitate. One diver reported briefly seeing something that looked like bodies already partially covered by a gravel slide. Don made the professional call, wait for daylight. It was too dark, too silty, too dangerous. The next morning, the recovery team arrived with grim determination. The first divers went down with small garden trowels, trying to move the gravel one handful at a time. But moving it just made things worse. The pile was completely unstable. For every rock they moved, more slid down from above. Don Dibble made the decision only a leader could. I'm going in. He descended with Game Warden Calvin Turner, leaving extra air tanks at 25 and 75 feet. Deep inside, at the entrance to the fatal passage, Don checked his air gauge, 1,300 psi. At that depth, with heavy work ahead, he knew what that meant. 10 minutes, just 10 minutes to find the lost divers and get out. He pushed his head and shoulders into the narrow opening, holding his safety line in one hand and his light in the other. All he saw was sloping gravel. He pushed forward, and in one heart-stopping instant, the entire pile collapsed. The gravel cascade buried Don at the entrance, pinning his arms and body. The water went from clear to zero visibility. He was stuck in complete darkness. He couldn't move, couldn't signal for help. He was buried alive. His breathing became fast and shallow, burning through his precious air. He felt consciousness slipping away. In that moment, Don made a terrifying decision. He accepted this was the end. Rather than panic, he decided to make it happen faster. He opened his mouth and swallowed several large gulps of silty water, preparing to die. Then something unbelievable happened. A powerful involuntary jerk, a survival reflex, shook his entire frame, freeing him just enough. Through his water-filled mask, he saw a light. Calvin Turner appeared like an angel, holding out a spare regulator. Don grabbed it and took a deep, life-giving breath. But the nightmare wasn't over. In his panic, Don had swallowed a huge amount of air. As they rose toward the surface, the dropping water pressure caused that air to expand like a high-altitude balloon. The pressure and pain in his gut became unbearable. By the time he clawed out of the water, his stomach was grotesquely distended. The pain was indescribable and continued for 12 agonizing hours. At Brooke Army Medical Center, X-rays revealed the horrifying truth. His stomach wall had burst open inside his body, causing peritonitis, a massive, deadly infection. The surgeon said it was like slicing into a fully inflated basketball. It was a 1 in a million injury. That Don survived was an absolute miracle. The impossible task. While Don Dibble fought for his life in the hospital, the recovery effort continued. The families hired a commercial diving company that brought in a recompression chamber and a huge industrial suction hose. For days they worked, sucking tons of gravel from 60 feet deep. But the task was impossible. Every time they cleared a foot, another foot of gravel slid in. The well was refilling itself. The money ran out. The job was too dangerous. 12 days after they disappeared, the search for Kent Mopin and Mark Brasher was officially over. The most reasonable decision was to leave them where they were. The well was sealed with a concrete lid and grate. The fatal gravel bed had won. The unanswered questions. The drone footage solved the physical mystery of what happened to Kent Mopin, showing the world that the fourth chamber is a deadly, unstable gravel trap. But it didn't explain everything. For centuries, Jacob's Well has been a center of mystery. The oldest legend claims it's bottomless, going straight to the center of the earth. While the drone mapped the known chambers, the system is a honeycomb. What if there are passages beyond leading down into an abyss no one has ever seen? Others believe the well is alive, that it has a voice, a low-frequency hum you feel more than hear. They claim it lures divers in with a strange hypnotic pull, that the siltouts and gravel slides don't feel random but intentional, as if the well protects its secrets. The Trinity Aquifer is a massive ancient underground ocean, almost entirely unexplored. Some wonder if something lives there, an undiscovered creature adapted to total darkness and crushing pressure. It sounds crazy until you remember that goblin sharks and giant squids lurk in our deep oceans. The well that refuses to stay closed. Today, Jacob's Well remains closed to swimmers for the foreseeable future, but history suggests it won't stay that way. The well has a pull that mere metal and concrete can't contain, a silent promise of secrets waiting in the dark. At least 12 people have vanished into those twisting passages, their bodies trapped in underwater tombs. The drone footage finally gave us a glimpse of what awaits in those forbidden depths. It revealed not just a beautiful natural wonder, but a perfect killing machine, a place where clear water turns to blinding clouds, where floors shift beneath you, and where the cave itself seems to conspire against escape. Jacob's Well stands as a stark reminder that some places, no matter how beautiful they appear on the surface, hide darkness beneath. And sometimes, that darkness has teeth.